All right, welcome everybody. This is our first entry into our YouTube programming. And as an introduction, real quick, my name is Dan, and I am the Chief Financial Ninja here at Black Belt Ledgers. We are a financial firm here in Oklahoma City. And our goal is to meet your business where it's at and help you level up, break through your ceilings, and increase your revenue, profits, and cash flow. And so the way that I want to start today is by taking a look at some of the chief areas of any business and see how each area is important. I kind of borrowed a lot of this thought process from a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And I really, really like the way that they phrase this. So to start this off, any successful business needs to have 3 areas that are all really strong. First area is sales. Your next area is operations. And then the last area, the one I like the most, is finance. And let's take a little bit about each of these areas and what they do, right? So as a general rule, sales is kind of what brings your company money, how your business makes money. And that encompasses everything from, the marketing to attracting the sales, all the way through closing. In operations, this is how you deliver your product or service. And then lastly, over here, the third area is your finance. And in this case, this is where we see important things like reporting, tracking money, and usually the finance department is also responsible for kind of the infrastructure of the business. They have a really big impact on software that gets used, technology that gets used in the business, anything along those lines to help business owners create a great infrastructure so information, not just financial information, can flow accordingly. And the one important thing I want to highlight here is that all 3 areas have to be really strong within any business. So you can imagine, yes, if I have a great sales department, I'm bringing in money, my marketing is on point, my lead pipeline is consistently full, I have great customer turnover, awesome. If I have a great operations division, I'm delivering exceptional products and services for my clients, and I have a team that's operating efficiently. And with finance, a strong finance department can help me track my profitability, track profitability by revenue stream, by client, by job, and also make sure that I have the right technology and other data associated with any processes to make this function. So let's take a look at some examples real quick of, what happens when things aren't in harmony. The goal here for each of these areas, sales has to bring in money. So if I have a weak sales, if sales are weak, I'm not going to have a lot of, I'm going to have an uninformed audience. And an uninformed audience is one of the worst situations that you can possibly have, because nobody knows what your product is, how your product is going to solve problems. Because in my opinion, I'll just say it right now, I think sales is all about solving problems. And usually the thing to solve the problem is your product or service, right? Because our clients, any client out there wants a pain pill, for lack of a better adage, not necessarily a specific vitamin that may take over time along, kind of a long process. A lot of folks are looking for a pretty quick turnaround and a pretty quick result now. And honestly, I think a strong sales team is all about solving problems. In addition to having a weak sales team, not only are you going to have an uninformed audience that doesn't know about your product or service or how it's going to solve your problem, you're also going to have a low revenue. And if you kind of think about it this way, like the operations side of thing that we'll get into here in a minute is how your product delivers or service delivers that solution. When we have weak sales, it's kind of like saying, I don't have enough food for my body to operate. It's kind of like operating in starvation mode, and that means the quality of your product will decrease. So in this case, low revenue is kind of like thinking about, starving your body. And that's a bad thing to do for your business. But let's take a look at what happens then if operations are weak. Now, operations are kind of how you deliver your product, your service, anything along those lines. If my operations side is weak, I'm going to have dissatisfied customers. Or dissatisfied clients. And they're going to have unsolved problems. And that usually leads to things like refunds, that leads to bad reviews, that leads to clients actively bad-mouthing your business and taking away how effective your product is and how effective your brand is. And it really damages your company's reputation, which is something that's so hard to build back up. So the other thing that we're going to see here is that we're going to see that we have inefficient processes. And usually whenever there are these types of things with like inefficient processes, we're going to see that is wasteful. It causes a lot of money to be left on the table. Maybe it's missing in a billing. Maybe it's missing in, maybe it's just, hey, I have too much waste when I'm making a product, or I can't serve as many clients with my operations team because they can only handle 5 clients each, whereas I need them to handle 10. So these inefficient processes can really, really shoot you in the foot in terms of a business perspective. So now let's think about what happens if finances are weak. There's a lot of problems that come with weak finances. If you don't have good bookkeeping systems in your business or anything along those lines, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. Like one, you're not going to know your profitability or your loss. Are you earning or losing money? A few other things that come with an inefficient finance department aren't just questions about profitability, but the magnitude of that's really important too, because you can be a $5.2 million business annually in revenue, but also what happens if you're spending $6 million in expenses every year? That right there is an $800,000 loss. I don't know about you, but I don't know many business owners that just have an extra $800,000 sitting around in their pockets. Not only do you have questions about your profitability, you're also going to end up with questions about cash flow and available funds. So profitability is kind of based on billing and expenses, whereas cash flow has to do with, do I actually have the money I'm owed? So, if you don't have a great cash flow, it could be because there's still a lot of people owe you money. So you got a lot of IOUs outstanding. You could also see that you owe other people because you don't have a great bill paying system in place. And maybe, let's say your operations team depends on some key software or some key equipment or key consumables and raw materials to get their job done. If you don't have the money available to pay those bills, then your operations department can't meet its needs, and then your sales team has nothing to sell. So the other thing about this is, if your finances are weak, you don't have any data around other processes either. So in this case, you don't know not only if you're profitable or not, maybe you don't know how much, if your advertising is effective. Are you seeing increases in revenue? You also don't know if, kind of what your targets are in terms of how much money you're spending for things like payroll and cost of goods and general overhead and marketing expenses. All of these things that are essential for your business to operate. And there's kind of one more really big thing here that not a lot of folks think about until probably sometime between February, March, and April. That's right. By having, if you have weak finances, you don't have great bookkeeping systems, you don't have good accounting systems and internal controls, you're also running the possibility of an unknown tax bill. I'm going to share an example with from one of my clients. He owns a heat and air business, and in the 2022 tax year, he didn't have a regular bookkeeper on hand. His total revenue was $2.4 million, and it sounded like he was making a lot of money, but he always struggled with cash flow issues. And then he got a hit with an $80,000 tax bill that was due when his taxes got filed, and that's a lot of money. Again, I don't know a lot of business owners that have 800, let alone 80,000 just sitting around and ready to go. So having a really strong finance department is kind of the thing that helps connect your sales and operations and make sure all of your processes are operating efficiently. And again, since I am your chief financial ninja, let's do a little bit of a deeper dive. Because this area right here, finances, are sometimes unknown to people because, I'll be honest with you, I think our public school system does a garbage job of teaching personal finance. I live in Oklahoma, and there is a required course in the curriculum called personal finance. It's it's pretty much an entire class on how to write a check, which is one of the most outdated things anymore at all. So, what financial education is out there actually is pretty trash. So the other thing I want to do inside this video then is dig a little bit deeper and ask the fundamental question that is kind of on a lot of business owners' mind. What does a strong finance department look like as my business grows? And I think, kind of from my experience of working with the clients I've worked with over the years and, my own experience in owning my own business for 10 years, it kind of goes in 3 stages. When we're just starting out and getting going, depending on the scale, I like to focus mostly on small and medium businesses because, one, that's what I'm most familiar with, and 2, that's because that's what there are the most of in the United States, right? There's like 31 million businesses in the United States. And like 90% of those are small and medium businesses. So it's important to talk to that audience because oftentimes the big corporations really get a lot of attention because they do have a big impact on the economy on a countrywide scale, but small and medium businesses have some of the biggest impacts in terms of a local scale. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what that looks like. So you're starting out in your business. What does a strong finance department look like? Honestly, when you're just starting out, a strong finance department looks like a really well maintained Excel sheet. And this is super simple. I mean, all you need to do is really just take a look at your bank accounts. If you do not have a separate business bank account and you're just mixing it in your personal checking account, don't do that. Get your own business account right now. Even if it's a separate personal checking, I don't care. It can always be upgraded later with your bank. If your bank doesn't do that, just find a new one. It'll be okay. But all you'll need to do then is take a look at your separate bank account with all of your business transactions and none of your personal ones. And you're just going to create a little Excel sheet that's going to summarize how much money has hit your bank account and how much money is going out of your bank account every month. And you can use this to get a pretty rough profit and loss. And for those of you that aren't aware, a profit and loss statement, it's just a summary of your income and expenses every month. Some businesses will operate on a quarterly basis. Some will operate on a monthly basis. It just depends on how it goes. But in this case, it's an Excel sheet, and it gives you your rough profit and loss. I'm also going to encourage you in your Excel sheet to kind of set it up in a very simple chart of accounts. Here's your income that says, hey, by the way, my business offers, just not one general service, right? If you're starting out, you're focusing on one offer, that's awesome. But maybe, let's say I own a martial arts school, so I'm going to use this as an example. Not only do I have, my money that comes from memberships, I also have a lot of money that comes from private lessons and retail. These are three very different revenue streams within my business that I use to make money. And I want to help be profitable with those. So I'm just going to assign any income that comes in to either memberships, private lessons, or retail. And then I also want you to create some categories for your expenses, where you have things like your cost of goods. So if you're a manufacturing process or a retail store, these can be your, the cost that you pay to get your materials that you need for resale. If you are like an HVAC business or a service business, this can be the amount of money you spend on things like labor and paying your subcontractors or your contractors or just anybody on your team that is out there doing the work on behalf of that operations department. I also want you to take a look at your marketing budget, because marketing is the strategy we use to get our name in front of our ideal clients. And it is important to make sure we dedicate a portion of our expenses to that and track that. Because if I'm spending $500 on marketing, I want to make sure I see more than a $500 increase in revenue. So make sure you track your marketing expenses separately. After your marketing expenses, it's important to take a look at things like payroll, and then also take a look at overhead. And overhead are some of your fixed costs like rent, utilities, anything along those lines, office supplies, consumables, etc. Things you need to have on hand to make sure that either you're delivering an excellent client experience or something along those lines, right? So I think that an Excel sheet, updating it twice a month based on the transactions in your bank account makes this a lot easier. You can probably spend about maybe 2 to 3 hours a month getting this done. And it's a pretty cheap and effective way to do it. But now I'm going to caveat this with just kind of like an approximate range. Maybe this is like a 0 to 50K range in terms of annual revenue. And this is great to help get you going. Take a look at my link below. I've got a super easy income sheet with a little short course on how to use it if you're a business that's just starting out, and we'll get you all squared away. So let's take a look at what happens as we grow a little bit bigger, right? We're kind of hitting this, we're starting to hit our stride. I'm going to call this into our growth start stage. This is where, I have some clients and I'm finding that like somewhere between 50 and 500,000, it takes me entirely too long to update my little Excel sheet profit and loss. I'm also going to see that I likely have either more than one account. Maybe I've started a savings account and I've got to keep track of that. Maybe I've opened a credit card or two to make this happen. So when you start getting more than one account is when you want to start shifting into some type of accounting software. And again, accounting software, you're familiar with a lot of these. These are things like QuickBooks Online. I do recommend the online version because, they always threaten that they're taking away the desktop. Also, having desktop makes it a lot trickier to work with an external professional. Not everybody is set up to VPN into your desktop. There's also a lot of folks that aren't comfortable with having somebody access their desktops remotely. So QuickBooks Online is pretty great. There's other things like Xero. I think FreshBooks is out there. Again, it kind of depends on what your needs are. If you've got a lot of inventory, QuickBooks Online is great for everything except a large inventory. It gets a little clunky. So I love QuickBooks Online. I love all of these for like general services. If you do maintain a large inventory, just get an inventory software and just make some adjustments in the financial side. So it works out pretty well. But with this accounting software does come a few new challenges, right? Like there is some software that has these free tutorials. And there are all kinds of people who have made entire YouTube channels that devoted to how to use QuickBooks. But I will say it's a little tricky to navigate through all of those because it's very rare they go in a nice, easy progression. Oftentimes it's hey, here's how you do this tip and trick within QuickBooks. And it can be a little cumbersome to learn. It takes a big time investment to learn the software. And even when you are using it, your finances are at a point where this is likely going to take you 5 to 10 hours per month to make this happen. And effectively use this and take your business all the way through the accounting cycle. So whenever you're kind of hitting this growth start stage, that's when I recommend starting to take a look for a professional bookkeeper. And that's kind of how I got my start in the financial industry. Is I started off as like a contract bookkeeper. And I still do a lot of just bookkeeping work for my clients. Shameless plug, I am accepting new clients. If you need a hand, I'm in the Oklahoma City area, but as a bookkeeper, I can service anybody in the United States. Check me out. Again, Black Belt Ledgers is where you can find me. My name's Dan. But a professional bookkeeper is great because they can take this task off your hands. And so now that you have more complex finances, you have a pro handling the ins and outs. They also, oftentimes what happens is they'll often send you a suite of reports every month. and interpret them for you. And this is an invaluable service. And if your bookkeeper is not in helping you interpret your reports, fire them. If they want to charge you more for interpreting your reports, again, fire them. But I do recommend having a professional bookkeeper because, there are things like account reconciliation and loan management and fixed assets and items to update from your tax returns. There are CPA offices that offer this all in one, but usually CPAs will just kind of do the quick job and knock it out, not necessarily in the right fashion. They'll do a good enough job to get it there, but it won't give you the information you need. Also, I recommend working with a bookkeeper because they're a lot cheaper than a CPA, and usually the relationship is a lot more trust-based. And then if there should be some type of like CPA, tax pro, anything along those lines that's going to help you because your finances are a little more complex now. You have things like asset deduction, you have an overarching tax strategy you're trying to implement in your business probably at this phase to help you minimize that tax bill. So again, I really recommend working with some type of professional at this stage and engaging a CPA only for audits and for tax returns. And then lastly, it's kind of when you're finally hitting this last growth phase, is kind of what I'm going to call I'm going to call it a growth run. You're not just starting out anymore. And this is generally for businesses in the 500K to 10 million range. Because now your finances are going to be complex enough where they're going to be taking you 10 to 20 hours per month. And that's just to keep everything in order. In addition, you have a few new obstacles. I think it was Biggie that said, "Mo money, mo problems." And you know what? He was right. Because, when you start getting up to this 500K threshold, this is when you really want to see some revenue stream visibility. What do I mean when I say that? It has a lot to do with the profitability. Instead of just taking a look at, my income, in my areas of like, stream 1, stream 2, etc. And then in my expenses, I have everything lumped together. We talked about things like I have my COGS, my cost of goods sold, I have my marketing, I have payroll, and I have overhead. That's great up to a certain point, but now I've got to see if I can break these up and say, okay, well, I have, money coming in from revenue stream 1, maybe that's $1,500. But if I'm looking at just general ideas here, it's looking at totals. As I get more money coming into my business, I need to say, oh, okay, well, in my expenses, I need to think about this in terms of revenue stream 1 and revenue stream 2. So if I'm a manufacturing side, revenue 1, and I'm spending, $1,400 in just the cost of goods sold, that's not a very profitable set. I've got to take a look at my pricing in this area of my business. Whereas if I'm looking at revenue stream 2, where my income is $4,500 this month, for example, and I see my cost of goods is $200, and the payroll associated with it is $1,400 this month. Now all of a sudden, I see that revenue stream 1 is only making me $100 in profit this month, whereas revenue stream 2 is making me, what's 4,500 minus 16, 2,900 in profit. Now I'm looking at this and saying, oh, I'm putting a lot of time and effort here into revenue stream 1. Maybe that's not the best solution for my business anymore. And I can now I have the data to make the choice of, well, we'll mix this and we're going to run with this and see how my business changes as I've made these decisions. The other thing that comes with the finance department at this point, you're going to need to start making strategic, data-driven decisions. Because now you're operating at a scale that is a lot higher. When you're at the $500,000, $1 million, $10 million area, the choices you're making are no longer a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand. Sometimes they're in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of decisions. And I don't know about you, but I want to make sure that the decision I'm making has evidence to back it up as to why this decision is going to work. I also want to make sure that, if I'm making a change, that I track these changes as well. So the new responsibility that comes with your finance department is starting to assign the data to your processes. So let's take a look at what this means. One of the common examples that I'm going to use is over in the sales department. And in this case, it has a lot to do with our sales pipeline, leads. In this case, it's a matter of, how many people are inquiring to work with me? How many people want more information about what I'm doing? Once they have more information, are my clients taking the next step to, signing the contract, to buying that product that I'm selling, or putting me on a monthly retainer for my services? So for example, I might say, hey, there's going to be a little scorecard that your finance department should be building for you. And in this case, it can be things like, hey, here's my total number of leads. Here is the number of leads that have a sales meeting. And then here's the number of sales closed, right? So in this case, it says, hey, I have a lot of people that come in and want more information, so they drop their email address and phone number to me, and then they schedule a call with one of my reps. And then from there, we can take a look at how many people are actually closing the deal, right? So here's our process. So the client leaves the email, leaves their info, they schedule a call, and then after that is when we close the deal, right? We make the sale. So now let's say I've created this scorecard for my client, right? There are 100 people that have left their information for me. But of those 100, 20 have wanted to schedule a sales meeting. And of those 20 meetings, only 2 people made the close, right? So again, I'm giving you example data here to show a point. So if I have 100 people leaving their information, I'm getting 20%, I'm getting 20 clients there, so I go from 100 clients to 20. That's a 20% conversion rate. In this one step. And then between my sales meetings and the sales closing, this is a 10% conversion rate. And then overall, in my sales process, I have a 2% conversion rate from a lead that comes into a sales closed. This information is so powerful, and I'm going to show you how this is useful. First, this gives me a lot of insight to say, am I happy with these numbers? And so what this does is this gives me information, one, about the process. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see here. So in this case, one, I now have info about my process efficiency. And then I can look at this and go, am I happy with this? And now I have questions that I can do some research on. And now I can ask the question, hey, what's the common conversion rate for my industry? Conversion rate is CR. Or what's the close rate for my industry, right? Now I can look and say, hey, I'm doing better or worse than the rest of my standards. I need to go in and take a look at my processes. And it tells me specifically which step. You know, if it's getting the scheduling a call versus closing the sale, you know, I might need to train my team on, you know, hey, here's how you tailor our service or product to address customer pain points. Oh, you didn't actually, or maybe you realize, hey, my team is actually not even asking for the sale. They're just giving information and letting people walk away. And now I can track these numbers over time to see if they improve. So I can track my data over time for improvement. The last thing here that's really important, and this is something that, again, your finance people should be doing for you, is now we have a model. You know, I'm setting let's say I set a goal, right? If I set a goal for 10 sales and I have, you know, information from my system says I get 2 sales for every 100 leads. Oh, sorry about that. If I get 2 sales for every 100 leads, then I need 500 leads to get 10 sales. And so now I've taken my abstract goal and saying, well, I need 10 sales. Okay, well, I need 500 leads. I can track my progress throughout the month to see if I need to adjust my advertising budget, or maybe change the nature of my advertising if it's not performing the way I need it to perform. So the second piece that comes with your finance department at this $500K to $10 million level is really right here in this big green box, this data-driven decisions. Your finance department should be assigning data to your processes so you can get a great conversion rate, help you plan the growth you want to have, and track your progress to meeting those goals. These are key for your success at this stage of business. All right, I think I've talked long enough, but I wanted to say thank you because in our video today, we talked about how we need to have 3 really strong areas in our business. We need to have a strong sales team to bring money in. We need to have a strong operations team to make sure we are delivering the consistency and the quality of product we need. And we need a finance team to help us track how efficient our processes are, help us control our spending, help us turn our processes into data, and interpret the numbers so we can get actionable steps. And when all 3 of these departments are strong and they're working together effectively, you're really going to see some significant changes in your business. Again, my name's Dan. I'm with Black Belt Ledgers. I'm the Chief Financial Ninja over here, and I'm here to meet your business where it's at and help take it to the next level. Stay tuned next Wednesday because we're coming at you with another great value-packed video that's going to help you break through in business. Stay tuned. We'll talk soon.